Hello! In this video, we're going to be talking about the CalFresh Healthy Living theory of change. Or put another way, how do we achieve our ultimate impact? So when we talk about the theory of change, this is another place where I think our language can get a little intimidating. It's really actually a very simple idea. It's just literally, how do I think I'm going to get somebody to change their behavior? So the theory is like, if I do XYZ, then I'm going to expect to see behavior change. So to get us into the mindset, let's do a fun little thought experiment. Let's say that you live with Ryan Reynolds. Lucky you. And Ryan is not great at putting away his dishes. Maybe some of you live with somebody currently who also is not good at putting away their dishes, and maybe you can relate to this situation. So, how are we going to get Ryan to put away his dishes? What's our theory of change? We may say, you know what? I'm going to yell at him. And that fear of getting yelled at is going to get him to change his behavior. Okay, that's our theory. Maybe we go with a different one. Maybe we say we're going to give Ryan a sticker every time he puts away his dishes, and the incentive of getting that sticker is going to get him to change his behavior. Or maybe we say, I'm just going to beg him over and over and over again and remind him and cry, and he's just going to feel bad for me and want me to stop bugging him, and so then he's going to change. In all of these cases, we're putting forth a theory of how we are expecting to elicit the behavior change that we want to see. So let's back up a moment and think first about why you got into this work in the first place. What impact do you want to have? Why do you get out of bed every morning to do this work besides a paycheck? Well, according to what you told us in the self-paced course, this is why you show up to work each day. You hope to achieve a healthier understanding of food and physical activities in individuals. You hope that you can help your community understand how good nutrition and physical exercise improves their quality of life and can lead to healthier future generations. You want to help the community stay active and make healthy food more affordable. You want to improve overall diet quality, food security, and quality of life for seniors. And you would love to give the community access to healthy foods, give them farmers markets, healthy stores, etc. So these are all great inspirational goals of how we want our work to impact the world. But how do we make these goals a reality? And how do we know if what we do every day is actually having the impact that we intend? Especially as a group of nearly 1,800 individuals funded to do CalFresh Healthy Living work. Well, I'm glad you asked. One perspective can be summed up with this quote: if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And herein enters the CalFresh Healthy Living way of measuring whether or not we are achieving our ultimate impact. May I introduce to you the theory of change? In short, the theory of change shows us the relationship between CalFresh Healthy Living and better health outcomes for Californians. It builds out for us exactly how we think we will achieve our ultimate impact. Or to go back to our earlier example, how we're going to get Ryan to do the dishes. So this model can actually do a lot of things. It can help us understand how the CalFresh Healthy Living program works, which is really the stage that a lot of you are in. It can help us when we set out to plan work in our communities. And it can also do what it's actually intended to do, which is help us to evaluate and measure our impact. So in this video, I'm going to give you a very high-level overview of the model just to get you familiar with it. And in the next live session, we'll dive deeper into the model and really tease out the nitty-gritty details. And when we talk about this model, I like to start with the end in mind. So I like to start all the way to the right with the ultimate impact, just like we've been doing in our course together. So here is the ultimate impact stated for the CalFresh Healthy Living program. Communities that equitably support health and well-being, increased nutrition security and physical activity, decreased obesity rates, and decreased racial and ethnic disparities in diet and physical activity. Now, one important thing to point out about this is that it is population level changes. So this is really measuring and accounting for all of the work happening in California to increase health and well-being. And although CalFresh Healthy Living is certainly a huge program, it's not the only game in town. So when we look at data at the population level, we can't necessarily say what impact CalFresh Healthy Living had versus other programs or work. But we can build our programs so that it feeds into this larger change. And the theory of change ultimate impact is really pretty aligned with what you all said you want to do. And so, yay, you're in the right job. That's a good thing. So if we want to achieve everything that we just said, our ultimate impact, then we're going to start to work backwards. What are the steps that are going to get us there? And the first step that we would expect to see is we would expect to see some behavior change. How do we achieve this behavior change? We know that change doesn't happen overnight. So what's the step before that? Well, you can think of intermediate outcomes as stepping stones to get to the actual behavioral outcomes or behavior change. So, for instance, before someone actually makes a change, we might first need to develop skills, attitude, and intentions to change. This may be at the individual level. So if we go back to an earlier video where we talked about somebody deciding to eat more apples, right? A very simple example. The behavior change is eating more apples, but we talked about what changes we might see at the individual level first. They might start thinking about eating more apples. They might say, wow, apples would be a really good thing to eat. And maybe they go out and they start buying apples and preparing for them, right? So that's that intermediate outcome, that individual change that you need to happen before you get to the actual behavior change of eating apples. But what we also said in that video is that the environmental changes around that person are also helpful. It'd be really helpful if the store where they shop sells apples and they sell them at an affordable price. And they're good apples. They're not the mushy kind where you bite into it and immediately spit it out. So these intermediate outcomes of individual changes and environmental changes is kind of that stepping stone that we need to have in order to get to the behavior change. And then once we see that behavior change, then we're going to hopefully see the ultimate impact as a result. So before we get to that intermediate outcome, right, how do we get to that individual change? How do we get grocery stores to stock more apples? And how do we get people to start thinking about and wanting to eat more apples? Well, what we laid out for you in our last live session were the 4 main ways that SNAP-Ed or CalFresh Healthy Living can influence that behavior change. And those are indirect education, direct education, PSEs, and social marketing. So these activities have been shown to create these intermediate changes, leading to behavior outcomes, leading to the ultimate impact. And this activities part of the model, when we actually build the whole thing out, you'll see that it doesn't just say what we want to do, which is what you see on the screen now, but it also really digs into what is going to make these activities the most effective. Because we don't just want to run workshops or do PSE work. We want to run really good workshops and implement PSE work that's going to make a real difference and be sustainable for communities. Because we know that all of that is what's going to lead us the best to those intermediate outcomes, which will lead us to behavior change, which will get us to the ultimate impact. So when we tease this out, we'll really spend some time in this area talking about how to make these things the most effective. The final part of the model is called inputs. And this is basically just what we have to do, what we have to work with to achieve the rest of the model. Now, note here that the relationship between inputs and activities is bidirectional. And this is the first and only time that we see this in the model. So basically what this says is that the inputs might be something that we already have that exists in our communities and that we can use to help us achieve the activities. Or it might be something that's built. It might be capacity in the community that's built through the activities that then creates the input that we can use. So we'll dig more into that when we go through the model, but just a note about that. But either way, the inputs are things that will support running really great and effective activities, which are the PSE work, the direct ed, the indirect ed, the social marketing. And those activities lead to intermediate outcomes of individual change, environmental change, which leads to the behavioral outcomes, also just called behavior change, which leads us to our ultimate impact, which is why you show up to work every day. So there you have it, a high-level explanation of the theory of change. In the next live session, we'll do a deep dive into each of these sections and really start to relate it back to everything else that you've been learning. But before I sign off, some of you may be wondering an important question. How do I get my partner, roommate, etc. to do the dishes? I don't know, as evidenced by this picture of my own kitchen. But if you have any great ideas that I can use for my own loved ones, please send them my way. Thanks.